Oh man, welcome on the box with FP Wellman. I am FP Wellman, also known as Fred Wellman. I'm your host of this show. We've got so much going on in the world. I don't want to waste any time. I've been dying to talk to our guest for a while. He's a prolific writer and a great American. Wonderful perspective on what's going on in the judiciary aspects of this democracy of ours. So let's not waste any time. Let's just get on with the show. Welcome. I already said it once. I'm going to say it again. I am Fred Wellman, your host of On Democracy with FP Wellman. This is the place to be. Thank you so much for being here. There's always so much going on in the world of politics. For the last few weeks, it's been clear that the battle's moved to the courts in just every possible way. I mean, from Trump's indictment to Clarence Thomas's ridiculous corruption to the bizarre abortion pill ruling in Texas, the judiciary has taken center stage in this discussion right now. And I just really wanted to have a conversation with somebody who knows that. So I want to have a guest who knows this stuff backwards and forwards. And so I'm thrilled to welcome my friend Dennis Aftergut to the show. Dennis is a former federal prosecutor. He's argued and won cases in the Supreme Court of the United States and California as chief assistant city attorney in San Francisco in the era before Obergefell and versus Hodges. Dennis successfully defended suits brought by Pat Robertson's legal foundation and United Airlines, challenging and the San Francisco's groundbreaking Equal Benefits Ordinance, which was a forebear of so much of what we're dealing with today, a non-discrimination law assuring workers and domestic partners the same employment benefits as those that were afforded to straight employees who were married. I don't know. For his work, he was named California Lawyer Magazine named him the top California lawyer, graduate of Amherst College, Harvard Law. All right. And was a Wasserstein Public Interest Fellow at Harvard. There's a great bio. Dennis, welcome to the show, man. Thanks for tuning in from California. I know it's early there. I appreciate your time.
Honored to be here, Fred. Thank you so much for asking me.
It's great. So I'm so glad you're able to join us. I can't thank you enough for the work you do. I've been so blessed to be on your email list, to see your post you put out. You're a prolific writer. I start every episode, as I mentioned before we talked, but how a guest got here. Your bio touches on your long experience, work on defending equal rights for all Americans, and you're still on the pages, literally every publication imaginable. I mean, let's see. I think I've seen you. You'll laugh, Dennis. Today I opened my Facebook, and the Facebook news feed was your Hill piece about the abortion ruling going for the Supreme Court. And I opened the Bulwark, and your piece on the Jim Jordan shit show was in there. So literally, it couldn't be better timing to be in the show. Then you're being published everywhere. But in all of that, your bio touches a little bit. How did you get to this moment where you're on the front lines yourself in your own way, fighting this battle for our democracy?
Fred, I said clown show.
Sorry about that. I may have edited that myself. Hey, look, tough but fair.
I'm a very proper guy, Fred.
Well, you're a lawyer. Yeah, freaking lawyer.
I'll just get a little personal here, Fred.
Please.
I'm an old guy, born in 1947, and I'm a Jew. The Holocaust is in my blood.
Yeah.
There's a Bertha Aftergut from where my grandfather came on Schindler's List.
Wow.
When Trump got elected in 2016, I remembered something that I asked myself as a 10-year-old in Sunday school. If you had been, I asked myself, a German, would you have been a righteous Gentile? Someone who took risk, had courage to save Hitler's victims. And Fred, when you're 10 years old, the answer is pretty easy.
Yeah.
Of course. Because you just don't appreciate what the risk really is.
Right.
When Trump got elected, I remember asking myself that. And I said to myself, okay, now the question has been called. Mm-hmm. I was retired doing things in education, and I became active in organizations in a national coalition, and I started to write.
Wow. Yeah. And you're still going. And it's funny how often I had this story, right? We had Bill Kristol on a little while ago. I've had Ruth Ben-Ghiat, these people who have kind of taken the fight to push back against this really rising authoritarianism. And it's always fascinating how many of us heard that call. I've told the story before, if you watch a show, where my moment was saying that he doesn't like people that were captured. It's like, well, okay, and so there's just these moments. Well, and you're still in the fight, and I love reading your stuff. I mean, you are my must read. I'm not gonna lie to you as far as understanding what's going on in these judicial processes.
Well, I just want to say about you, Fred, that it's such an honor to be in with someone like you who is fighting so hard, doing everything that he possibly can. Everybody can do a little bit. It doesn't take a lot from everybody. But people like you, Fred, and Bill Crystal and Ruth, people who understand and see what's going to happen. It wasn't hard to see in 2016 what was going to happen, and it's all unfolding day by day now.
Yep, exactly. And there's so many aspects to it. And as we said, I'll just actually start with my last question on the long list. I mean, let's start with the bigger picture of the judiciary. That one of the themes I talk about on this show a lot is the institutions, the threats to our institutions, and how in many ways our institutions have failed us in this modern battle, how they were simply not prepared for this moment. I think we got very comfortable. The checks and balances that we were all so proud of and raised on aren't meeting the moment. I had Soldot O'Brien on a month or so ago to talk about how the media is not doing their part. Katie Fang and I brought the topic up on the media as well. Of course, Katie straddles both the worlds. She's a media personality and she's a lawyer, right? How do you see? I mean, you're watching. You're a long time. You've litigated before the Supreme Court of the United States. Is our judiciary failing us? I guess I should ask Dennis very directly. Has the judiciary failed us, and is it going to meet this moment? I mean, I think really your piece that we were going to talk about later in my conversation about the abortion pill ruling going before the Supreme Court, you literally wrote that this is a test, right? The law is clear, but you yourself, who's a lifetime attorney, is saying, I'm not sure they'll follow the law anymore, right? I mean, that's a scary moment. So is the judiciary doing their part, or should we be worried?
Both.
Yeah.
Both.
Yes. Right. Yes.
Fred, first, I just want to say I'm just honored that you asked me, and then you list the people who have been before me, and I think, my gosh, what extraordinary company to be in. So thank you.
You're welcome.
One of my favorite memes to keep in mind, Fred, is the Stockdale paradox. Do you know the Stockdale paradox?
Yeah, tell me more.
Okay. Jim Collins in Good to Great tells the story of Admiral Stockdale. Stockdale was at the Hanoi Hilton, in the Hanoi Hilton with your hero, McCain.
Yep.
And later on, his politics you might have quibbled with. He was the vice presidential candidate for Ross Perot.
Yep, I remember well.
But back at the Hanoi Hilton, here's what he attributed his success to: a paradox. The paradox is face the brutal facts, unwavering faith. Face the brutal facts, keep unwavering faith. He tells the story of his shipmates, also carried, or pilot mates, also in the Hanoi Hilton, who had faith, but they didn't face the brutal facts. They would say, Fred, we are getting out of Thanksgiving.
Right.
Oops. Christmas.
Right.
Oops. New Year's. Oops. And they, by failing to face the brutal facts, they shriveled and died. Whereas he said, I have no goddamn idea when I am getting out. It is bad, but I'm getting out. Face the brutal facts. Keep the faith. The brutal facts on the judiciary, I don't need to tell you, a 6-person majority on the Supreme Court.
Yep.
Some of whom, more than others, are simply bent on their ideological imperatives.
Right.
And some of them, like Clarence Thomas, I think, are accountable, hold themselves accountable to their peer group. Harlan Crow, the billionaire who takes him on $500,000 trips, and the Federalist Society.
Yep.
And I suspect, like all human beings, what are my peers going to think if I rule this way or that way? And then there's their ideological imperatives. And then it's not just them, it's judges like Matthew Kaczmarek, appointed by Trump, yep, who issued this abortion pill ruling abomination, which has nothing to do with the law whatsoever.
Or science.
Or, yes. A judge second guessing scientists, that's a
red flag.
That's a well-trod path among these ideologues. Or Eileen Cannon, another Trump appointee. She was the judge who got overruled by the 11th Circuit. She said Trump gets a special master, and that was ended a few months later.
Yep.
But you have to keep the faith, because that 11th Circuit, those judges included Trump-appointed judges, very conservative judges, and they overruled her. There are exceptions in the appellate courts, of course, but 60 courts across the country, state and federal, ruled against Trump in the aftermath of the 2020 election.
Yeah.
The judiciary has held strongly, but face the brutal facts about what happens if Trump is elected next.
Yeah.
And I just want to say one other thing that I always have in mind as I write about the judiciary. Timothy Snyder, in On Tyranny, Chapter 5, defend the institutions that you care about. Those institutions are fragile, whatever they are.
Yep.
Defend them. They need people's support to stand.
Yep. And that's why I turned to you. I think that's exactly, and that's kind of what we were saying. You really answered my last question, right? It's like, what can we do? How do we fight back? How do we maintain our, the battle for average Americans? And the battle is raging, bringing us back to Alvin Bragg, who of course is in the limelight right now in two different worlds, right? Number one, obviously he's dealing with Trump. We'll deal with that second. But the current thing is the Jim Jordan road show, if you will. You said clown show, I said shit show. Let's just Hakuna Matata, tomato. But Jordan, of course, is his antics have started immediately as soon as the indictment came down. Actually, before threatening, they've sent out a subpoena to a former prosecutor in that office. Alvin Bragg turned around and sued him. I was joking on Twitter yesterday that in a battle of the wits between Jim Jordan and Alvin Bragg, I'm not sure if there's any, I'm not too concerned. But having said that, what is the danger here where a congressional committee head, the Judiciary Committee head, is directly involving himself in a criminal prosecution at a state level, frankly? For those of us who don't understand just how unusual, is this truly as unusual as we think it is, and where do you think this will go?
It's extraordinarily unusual. Attorneys General of the United States of both parties have refused to testify before Congress on ongoing criminal investigations. It's no different. In fact, it's even worse.
Right.
Congress trying to intrude on a state prosecutor because he's intruding on the sovereignty of a state and undermining the basis of our system of federalism.
Right.
So it's extremely unusual. If you want to know you can look at the dangers at the micro or the macro level.
Okay.
And just stop me if with any question.
You're rolling.
At the micro level, he's trying to do discovery for Trump. He's trying to call Mark Pomerantz, the former deputy who resigned after Bragg was not willing to go full force on the other case. They are still investigating.
Right.
And so if it turns out that Pomerantz does appear, he will be completely acting properly if he refuses, that investigation is still going on. The one I was working on, I can't talk about it.
Right.
That would be totally proper.
Yep.
You could also say it proves Alvin Bragg wouldn't go for my case. I think we had Trump dead to rights.
Yeah.
I think we could prove him guilty. But Alvin Bragg wasn't convinced. I disagree with that. But I'll tell you what, if he thinks the case that he brought about the hush money payments and the improper false entry of business records was good enough to go, he believes that case he can prove beyond a reasonable doubt. And that's a strong case that he will prove Donald Trump guilty.
Yeah.
Okay, I've gotten distracted.
Yeah.
But one danger is that Jordan is doing criminal discovery for Trump of the kind he's not entitled to. There's a process for that.
Yep.
He will get his proper discovery. And I just want to also acknowledge, because you got to face brutal facts, Mark Pomerantz is angry. He doesn't feel like Bragg did right by him. It's possible he won't say the things I just said.
Yeah.
It's possible he'll testify if the judge says it's okay. That's the case that Bragg brought.
Yeah.
At the macro level, it's danger because this is just one more vial of acid corroding the foundation of our federalism, of our entire constitutional republic, crossing all kinds of lines. And that's the business of Trumpism. The business of Trumpism is corroding all the institutional constraints on a strong man like Trump wants to be. And that is why we fight. I don't want to just keep going on here.
No.
I have some other thoughts, but you go ahead and ask.
And that's exactly it, right? It is such an erosion of those lines, and you're right. And I quoted Ruth Ben-Ghiat's book, Strong Men. It's something she touches on in her book about this movement by authoritarians to undermine the institutions and undermine their democracy for their strength and to position themselves. And I also talk about a lot that they can't do it alone. They need people like Jim Jordan. They need these willing partners who are willing to toss aside all the norms. But I also think Jim Jordan's a fucking klutz. I mean, you said something kind of key in what you're just saying. Is like there's a very good chance Pomerantz is gonna go out there and tell him, yeah, Trump's guilty as fuck. I mean, it just seems like Jim Jordan, and you did mention, I quoted you. I love what you said. Since February, talking about Jim Jordan, since February has hosted hearings that have flopped harder than a distracted trapeze artist. I like it. A good, nice play of word, and that's exactly it. I mean, the problem is Jim Jordan as Trump's guy isn't that great, right? I mean, there's a very good chance his efforts are going to blow back in his face because people are going to go under oath, just like the Twitter hearings went so horribly awry, right? People get a vote, right? The witness gets to say something. The other members, the Democrats, who I'm really proud of the House Democrats. I'm going to say that I'm very proud of House Democrats who are handling minority extremely well. They're like, all right, well, I get a chance to argue too. And the guys at Goldman, just AOC. They're in the fight, taking it to them. So I think politically, not judiciary, but politically, this could very well be yet another Jim Jordan cell phone, which is sort of his life, right? I've never seen somebody who steps on as many rakes as Jim Jordan does. But I think you're right. The goal is to undermine and to help his friend Donald Trump. But you did point out in your piece, it probably hurts him politically too, because maybe he's secure in his little district there. But once again, kind of like we'll go to the abortion pill ruling. These are issues that everyone's watching, right? While they're occurring in maybe Texas, that's occurring in Ohio, or what he's doing. The entire world's watching these things and seeing what the GOP is up to. The abortion ruling. So I want to get to that because I don't want to lose you when I have the chance to talk to you about this. For those of us who are,
Fred, I just can't control myself because you've put your finger on just the key point. Jim Jordan's brand, he's proved it, he's established it, is faceplant. And he has face planted all the way through these hearings.
Right.
And the point that you've put your finger on is keep the faith and keep defending the institutions, because those Democrats are there because people keep the faith. and they work and they support. And the other nail that you hit right on the head is that we can lament things like gerrymandering. You mentioned how secure he is.
Yep.
Well, there's a backfire here.
Yep.
I call it a silver lining.
Yep.
And that is, he's so secure, he will follow Trump to the ends of the earth. And the broad mainstream that we saw vote in contested elections across the country in November 2022, and that we saw getting to abortion in Wisconsin at Janet Protasiewicz' election. They don't like this.
Right.
And the polls that I cited in the piece with Trump at 25% thumbs up. I mean, that is so tiny. That's where he was right before Nixon resigned. So face the brutal facts, keep the faith. There's every reason to keep the faith and keep speaking out and keep voting.
Oh, brilliant. And you're right, because people are, you're nailing it. People are seeing it, and it's driving turnout. You know, we say it a lot here on the show. I had you'll love this, you'll appreciate. I had a conversation with some political professionals. I'll leave it at that. And they were telling me how damaged the Democratic brand is. I'm like, you mean the ones who hold the White House and the Senate, and barely in my very damaged, clearly. But they were saying how this campaign I was working on, we need to make sure we were appealing to independents and Republicans, right? I said no. And they looked at me like I was nuts. Like, well, yeah, you do. I said, no, I don't. I really don't have to. Because if Democrats show up, if Democrats are created, if Gen Z, which will be somewhat, the numbers are not 2.5 million more Gen Z voters by 2024. If we continue to motivate our base and our base shows up, we will win, right? It's not, there aren't enough people. There's not enough people voting. And these actions and these activities by the national GOP are firing them up from every age, not just Gen Z, right? So, I mean, I'm not here to turn on.
But again, Fred, you nailed it. There's a piece in the Washington Post today about the massive increase of youth voters in that Wisconsin election. And, you know, Judge Janet won by 11%. That's not a landslide. That's an earthquake in Wisconsin where elections are won by 1 point. It's just so evenly divided among voters. And you just see all these signs. The GOP understands. Kellyanne Conway said something on Fox News the other day.
Scott Walker.
They know they're in trouble.
They know.
So that abortion ruling in the Supreme Court, Dobbs overruling Roe v. Wade, it's horrible, and it's the gift that keeps on giving. It's the way, believe it or not, if people work, the only way we restore our democracy in 2024 is a Democratic Party trifecta. I believe in a two-party system, but we've lost one. And the only way is because the Supreme Court does these supremely stupid, wrongful things. Matthew Kacsmaryk piles on, and so does Jim Jordan, because they feel safe. And they are the gifts that keep on giving.
Yeah, and then to add the last part of that gift that keeps on giving, I live in Missouri. The Tennessee State House just gave us a gift, but for their stupidity, and gained nothing. The Missouri House just voted to defund public libraries because two librarians on their own are suing the state because of a ridiculous book ban they enacted last session. So they defunded all the public libraries. They think they're winning these little wars, and they just keep on showing, especially Gen Z. I'm very fortunate to be an advisor to voters tomorrow. Santiago Mayer was on the show with that. Victor Shee, if you see him on Twitter, I think I'm going to be joining him this week on his show. The Gen Zers are seeing it. I was just in Virginia visiting my kids, my two Gen Z kids, and they knew all. They're read. These aren't political kids. They're read in. You're right. So the tide is turning. You're right. The fact that Scott Walker's freaking out, Kellyanne Conway's freaking out.
It was Victor Shee who first tweeted about the young people showing in the Wisconsin election. So you're talking to
Yeah, he's
people.
a good kid. It's funny, these
Really,
kids,
really good.
I get so inspired talking to them.
And your point about Tennessee, again, who was it that drove that? The young people who are finally saying enough, enough. And that drove the Republicans crazy.
Yep.
They go and do the stupid thing that the whole world watches.
Yep.
And then they have to back down. They stay silent when the legislator is replaced,
Reinstated. Yep.
Yeah, reinstated, and he walks in with his fist up because young people came out to the streets because of the idiocy of Republican gun policy. You are so right.
Going back, and it's something you said is really key. I was looking at your bio, and it really takes me back to you're a boomer, right? You're part of the civil rights movement, the original one. I'm positive of it. Reading your bio, what you did in San Francisco to fight for the rights of our LGBTQ community, you were part of it. I mean, how do you feel? I mean, you're in your 70s. You're the OG civil rights, right? Are you seeing that movement amongst this new generation, this Gen Z generation? I mean, does it have echoes of the past for you, or are you seeing the same kind of movement? And of course, we know the land change, huge landscape changes that come in. Are you seeing that now, Dennis, in your perspective of being there from the beginning?
Yes, I think that just what you said about Tennessee, and let me draw a connection.
Yeah.
I came of age in the Vietnam War.
Yep.
And there was a massive youth movement.
Yeah.
What fueled the youth movement, Fred?
Anger.
Yes. And anger comes from personal injury. You're absolutely
injustice.
right.
Actually, my therapist tells me that, by the way, Dennis. Fred, your anger is based on injustice. Like, well, I'm just pissed, but either way. But yeah, a perceived injustice drives anger.
And what was the personal injury?
Yeah.
It, for some, and I'm proud to say I'm among them because I carry the Holocaust with me.
Yeah.
But for some, justice, just like you.
Yep.
For the mass threat, the threat of being drafted. Mm-hmm. That's why Nixon ended the draft, because to end the youth movement.
Yeah.
And he was pretty successful. Not with me, wasn't, but with most people. Yeah. And now here's the connection, Fred. Why are those young people acting in Tennessee?
Anger, the threat. They're being threatened by gun violence. They're being threatened by their
personal safety. Mm-hmm. Same thing. And this is where to keep the faith about the stupid things that those Republican legislators do.
Yep. They
are so into their own mindset, their own bubble, that they, it's political jujitsu. They step right into the trap.
Yep.
And activate all those young people who will vote in 2024, just like you said, just like your kids.
Yep. Yep. And they're motivated, and they're seeing it. And there's a failure lack of understanding of what community means to this generation compared to when we were growing. Even you're a few years older than I am, but my community was as far as I could ride my bike in Kirkwood, Missouri, right? But these kids have an international, global community. My own son, I've told the story. I don't know if I told in the show. Matt, correct me, I'm sure. But I tell a story often of my son who was 8. I remember him one day laughing and being crazy in his room. I bust into his bedroom, like, "What are you doing?" And he's on Xbox Live with his friend in Germany. His community was a kid in Germany his age playing video games with them. That they have a larger, a more global connected community than we can ever imagine, and it's playing out right in politics. And you're right, this generation. I mean, there's no bigger irony, right? Let's talk about the irony of this movement, this conservative movement. They're defunding public libraries. In Texas, where a judge voted that books need to go back in the library, the Texas legislature, I believe, is trying to get rid of the actual library where those books are going. Do you know what is this? Like, all the world's fucking information, like almost all the information ever found in the world is on this device in my goddamn pocket. And they're trying to fight kids from seeing books, right? And the stupidity of it is almost mind-boggling, right? So all they're doing is creating ammunition for their opponents. Now, go into that ammunition for opponents. Something I talked about in last week's show is, you get it, is, look, Alvin Bragg filed 34 felony charges. I'm not a lawyer. I'm just hearing 34 felony charges and going, shit, right? And the pundits are all out saying, oh, well, I'm sure you wrote a piece about it. Oh, this is not a big deal. Oh, it is a big deal. It depends on whose side you fall on. Even our own side, our progressive friends are saying, oh, this is weak. But I'm saying the average American just hears 34 felony charges, right? And more to come. I mean, do you think there's I mean, I really loved your piece where you actually wrote out you did the opening argument on your left. Do you think he's genuinely in trouble here, right? And there's more to come, in your opinion, right?
I totally believe so, because first of all, thank you for referring to the opening argument. That was one of my favorites.
I love that piece. That was one of my favorites you've written.
I could rechannel actually being in the courtroom, and there's so much drama in a courtroom.
Yeah.
And just for 1 second, I'll say, it would be so much fun to argue that case, because essentially
it's right there.
Trump got himself elected by hiding the truth from the American people. That's not the crime. The crime is in the false entries, but that doesn't matter. Juries will understand why this case really matters, because everything that followed with Trump was because he did that.
Right.
Right when he was the most vulnerable with the
grabbed by the P, the Access Hollywood tape. Yep.
Right. So it's, people can understand, you hide the truth, you get elected, you do all this damage. They can understand why this case is important. And I also just want to say quickly, jumping on that point I made earlier about Alvin Bragg, he knows he can win this case.
Right.
His standard in bringing this case is not, do I have evidence of guilt beyond a reasonable doubt? It's way beyond that, because this is Donald Trump.
Right.
And it's not only that he declined the other case is not ready. It's also this, Fred. What really fuels most people, we already talked about.
Anger.
Personal interest.
Yep.
Personal interest.
Yeah.
Alvin Bragg just got himself elected. He runs again in 2024.
Yep.
If he doesn't get a conviction, he's a one-term district attorney in New York, in Manhattan, and he knows that.
Yeah.
And he is not about to take the smallest risk. You can have complete confidence that he has complete confidence in the strength of his case, because he's got a real serious personal stake. What was your question? I got distracted.
No, you just nailed it, actually. No, we're good. Thanks. Katie Fang was on the night before the indictment. Katie Fang was on MSNBC. I'm a huge Katie fan. Like I said, she was on the show. Katie described the situation that Donald Trump's facing as essentially a three-stage rocket, is what she likes to use, right? Stage one gets you off the ground. We're in flight, if you will. That's Alvin Bragg, right? Stage two is a little bit more powerful. It's got to get you out of orbit, right? And that's going to be Fani Willis down in Fulton County. And then, of course, stage three up gets you into orbit. That's going to be Jack Smith, right? I kind of love that. And I love that picture. And it makes sense. Yeah. Do you see stage two kicking in soon? I mean, we're off the ground. Where do you see stage two right now?
We don't know. Those two boosters, those two rocket boosters are interchangeable.
Right. Okay.
Because number two may be Jack Smith, Mar-a-Lago.
It seems to be moving fast, doesn't it? I mean, we're seeing a lot of movement.
I mean, this guy is moving at warp speed.
Yeah.
It was such a tragedy for America that Merrick Garland decided to go broad rather than go deep. What I mean by that is usually prosecutors in big cases have to make a choice. Merrick Garland decided it was better for America if he prosecute every single one of the insurrectionists participated that he could find.
Right.
And don't minimize the importance of that.
Yeah.
One reason we haven't seen demonstrations, I believe, about Trump's indictment is that people are going to prison for a long time. This retired fire person just got 4 years in prison.
Yep.
That's for participating and using a fire extinguisher on cops.
Yep.
That's serious. we have all these, we have 2 or 3 now cases of convictions of Proud Boys, not Proud Boys, I'm sorry, of Oath Keepers. Proud Boys are about to come.
Yep.
So those are deterrents. That's what prosecution does.
Right.
But Garland chose to go wide rather than deep. And here's Trump getting hoisted on his own petard, Fred. Fred, Trump announces that he's going to run for president as a political narrative shield.
Right.
Hey, they're just going after me because I'm running for president.
Right.
What did that get him? Jack Smith. And Jack Smith is, I don't know that I've ever seen a prosecutor going after everything and winning.
Yeah.
Winning. I'm not getting tired of it, Fred. I'm not getting but that case is close to ready. He's got the lawyers. He's had the lawyers in front. And it's easy to confuse what's going on because he had Stephen Miller. He had Stephen Miller testify, but that's not likely about Mar-a-Lago.
No.
The Mar-a-Lago case is tight and powerfully strong.
Right.
That is a case that is going to get a conviction, I'm sure. I believe they're going to bring that case in D.C., not Florida. They better.
Yeah.
And there's every reason, I wrote a piece with Larry Tribe about that, to do that, to bring it in D.C. But it's not clear that that case is going to come after Fani Willis. People are saying, who are in the know, that Fani Willis's case will not come until May. That has to do with intricacies of the Speedy Trial Act, the way it operates uniquely in Georgia. It starts all over, and she's on a clock, and she's waiting for the next clock to start running. That's what people in the know say. So, I think that you can expect that case to come in May. That's the case about interference with Georgia's election, right, and about false electors. It's tied to Trump's attempt to overturn the 2020 election, and that's a very important case, just like Alvin Bragg's, just like Jack Smith's.
Wow, that's a lot of legal problems, and one of the things we talk about a lot is, and I use I won't mention who they are, but I have family members who are in their 80s actually, and they're lifelong Republicans, but they're they're normie Republicans. They liked Trump for a while. But one of the things we did with the Lincoln Project, and I've mentioned it last week on the show, is we targeted 3 to 4% of people who voted for Trump, Republicans, the normie Republicans, and peeled them off. And that's, in the end, that's where he lost that margin. The general election was that margin. I don't see them coming back when you hear 34 felony charges, the Mar-a-Lago stealing of documents, because the facts are brutal. And you said it, you circling back what you said a little while ago, right? 25% national approval. His polls are plummeting, right?
Yeah, and Fred, all the hand wringers,
right,
saying, "Don't indict Trump; it will strengthen him." Well, it has strengthened him in the Republican primary, but winners of Republican primaries don't rule the country. You have to. I don't know if you've heard, but you have to win the general.
Yeah, it's weird, right? I know.
Yeah. I know. I'm sure you're glad.
At least outside of Missouri, and
I'm sure you're glad you brought me on the show so that your listeners will remember how to win the general.
Important shit. Yeah, that's it, right? And again, and they're not coming back for a guy with 34 felony charges against him, and 2 more cases.
At the same time, there's some very brutal facts out there that people need to face up to. Norm Ornstein and I wrote a piece on the No Labels party that is putting, they're probably going to put Joe Manchin on the ballot in battleground states. And these are close elections, even with Trump. It'll be a close election. So people need to pay attention to that and speak out against that.
Yeah, and then do the work to stop it. Man,
and by the way, there are some people who are doing more than speaking out. I don't know who was the Democratic Party, I think it was, brought a suit to disqualify No Labels from the Arizona ballot. We'll see what happens there. Yep. But that's people fighting. Yep. That's people facing brutal facts and keeping faith in the judiciary.
And the last question, and I'm actually writing a piece for my Substack right now, to be honest with you, is I got in trouble on Twitter the other day because I dared to criticize Biden, because I said, after the Tennessee 3, I was like, well, where the fuck are you, basically? I mean, I'm demanding help. We're not going to defeat this without national leadership. I was thrilled to see the vice president jump on an airplane and fly down to Tennessee the next day. I think. Do you think there's more we could be doing on the National Democratic Party and the national leadership, the White House and others, to fight these wars? Because the battles we're fighting, going back to the beyond the Trump and going back to the very beginning of this conversation with the Tennessee 3, with the abortion ruling, with the attacks on transgender rights, especially since you fought that battle in many ways for LGBTQ rights. These are real battles, right? These aren't culture wars. They're real live wars, and people are going to lose their lives. Here in Missouri, they just perfected a bill. These cartoon villains are going to get rid of transgender and gender affirming care in Missouri for 18-year-olds. These are real battles. Are there things that DOJ could do to push back on those laws? I mean, am I missing something? Is there something like the Civil Rights Division could do? Is what could we ask of our national leadership to stop these fights, or at least participate in them, and show people who live in red states like me they're in the fight with us?
Right. You're talking about on transgender,
for example. Yeah, let's use that as an example. Like these laws.
That's gay people have always been the first targets of attacks. They are, it's the wrong metaphor, but the attacks on them are canaries in the coal.
I agree. It's easy target.
So it's very, very important that people draw the line right away before the contagion spreads, to mix metaphors. The important thing, I believe, the Justice Department will respond in whatever way they can. Just like the vice president goes to Tennessee, it's all about what people do. We have enormous unleashed power, everybody doing whatever small thing they can. You don't have to have access to media, as to print media or to websites. Every person, whether it's just talking to somebody, every person, and the institutions will respond. The politicians will respond. We saw that in Tennessee.
Right.
We see it everywhere.
Yep. Oh, I love it. And Dennis, I think that's a great place to let you go. I think what a great discussion. I mean, that's it. I mean, that's where I always, it's funny. My last question every show is, what can we do? And you just answered the question without me asking it. What can we do? We have to put pressure on them. And for me, I'm very blessed with, and you too, we're blessed with certain platforms that we're very fortunate to have. I don't know why so many people follow me. Probably because I cuss a lot, but for reasons I can. So I'm going to use that platform to hold both sides accountable, because the example I use, and you are a child of World War II. Is in the end, the Holocaust ended because we fought a war, right? We fought back against fascism. We stopped fascism. It's not enough to say, well, they're to blame, we should expect them to step up. There is no good guys on the other side. We stop them by holding our good guys, the actual good guys, accountable. And that means, like you said, speaking out on our platforms and pushing the good guys to fight, right?
If I may.
Yes, sir.
That is the real reason why the indictment by Bragg matters. The indictment is the accountability statement.
Yep.
Yes, we want the conviction, but you cannot be intimidated from bringing charges against someone for crime that happens in your jurisdiction because, I'm going to wring my hands and worry about the political effects. You cannot do that. You need to hold accountable. There's an old phrase from New England: you can't wring your hands and roll up your sleeves at the same time.
Nailed it. I love it. Thank you. Well, we're going to roll up our sleeves here. That's all we do here is roll up our sleeves and get in the fight. And I appreciate you still doing it, sir. And I appreciate you finding your voice and providing me so much fodder for understanding what's going on in this country right now. And for everybody following the show, you can find Dennis, the Bulwark, on the Hill. You are a prolific writer. You're on Twitter a little bit. I tweet all your stuff out. Dennis Aftergut on Twitter. And I just can't thank you enough for taking time for me here and being a friend and a colleague as well. And thanks for this conversation. I really appreciate your time.
Fred, I am a huge fan of you. and I'm completely honored to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks, Dennis, man. Have a great day. We'll talk to you soon, okay? Man, wasn't that a fun show? What a great guest, brilliant guy. If you're not following his stuff, he is at Dennis Aftergut on Twitter's, but he's not on there. He just monitors. He'll see you. But I tweet out all of his columns every day. He's a prolific writer. He writes with some of the smartest people out there. He heard Larry Tribe and others. He's just what a wonderful national treasure that Dennis Aftergut is. So I'm just thrilled to have him. As closing notes, our new Substack community is really taking off. I mean, I'm excited about it. I was hoping it would, but here we are. People are signing up and they're doing they're interacting. They're sending me notes. Now Substack's launched their notes platform, which was what made Twitter so mad at them. It's a terrific place to interact. If you're not on Substack, you can join for free and you'll get a lot of the content. I'm putting out all of it this month for free. We will do a little paywall for some really exclusive content starting at the end of this month. I'm very excited about it. I'm setting up a Zoom with a friend who's an actress who's famous, and you get to see that if you're a paying subscriber. So I would be just so privileged and honored if you considered joining as a paid subscriber or just joining as a subscriber. It's free. It's at fpwellman.substack.com. fpwellman.substack.com. Please join. I really appreciate it. As always, you can find me on Twitter at @fpwellman. I'm causing trouble again. Official Instagram is fpwellmanofficial. I mean, I put pictures of my hikes and stuff on there. The podcast is available on Democracy Pod on Twitter and on YouTube. If you haven't found us already, it's On Democracy Podcast is the YouTube handle. I think you're going to see this show in some new places. I hope so. It'll be kind of exciting if you do. We're really excited about some partnerships we're developing and some new content we're developing. The guests I've got lined up, y'all. Holy crap. I have the coolest guests lined up in the next month or so. You're going to love it. I'm thrilled to have you here. Please hit like, subscribe, share, be a part of our community on the Substack, and just keep on going. Before I let you go, of course, I have to mention our friends at Vi Media. Vi Media has been a great partner. We've been working together now, I guess 6 months now, right, Matt? Over 6 months. And they've been good friends and mentoring me a little bit on how to run this thing and sponsoring the show. They're a digital marketing partner based right here in St. Louis with a national footprint. It's VIE.media on the internet. Again, Vi Media. Check them out if you get a chance. I just appreciate their partnership. As always, you can find me on the internet. You'll find me on Substack. I got a new piece coming out today. Hopefully I finish it. Life is great. Spring is in the air. Got the guns out. I'm telling you, you can't be a better time to be alive. We are in the fight. America is standing up. We're pushing back against authoritarianism. We're pushing back against the madness that has become the Republican Party. I'm so thrilled to be in the fight with you every day. And thanks for joining On Democracy with Fred Wellman.